The future is hurtling towards us, powered by artificial intelligence. And a critical question for any nation is whether its education system is preparing the next generation for this new reality. For South Africa, its deep inequalities in infrastructure and resources, this challenge is particularly acute. So, are our teachers ready and willing and able to equip learners with AI-driven skills? To discuss this, we're joined via Zoom by Professor Lindelani Mnguni, Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Pretoria, who's conducted research on this very topic. Professor Mnguni, welcome to the show. Appreciate your time. Now, to begin, what does AI-driven education mean in practical day-to-day terms, especially for a high school science classroom?
Good afternoon. It means a number of things. First of all, it means we are using digital technologies, specifically AI, to support teaching and learning, not to replace the teacher, not to replace the learner, but rather to support the teaching and learning project at different levels, be it from a teaching perspective, learning perspective, or even assessment level.
So how does this change the learning experience for the learner? Because before AI or ChatGPT, one would have to read through mountains and mountains of material, right, to understand a particular subject matter. So fair enough, much of that is text or copy that you may not need. Now with AI, you literally put in a question into ChatGPT or any other format, and it just reels out your answer.
So that's precisely the risk that we are facing, because AI should not replace the need for one to read their materials or even come up with answers. If we do that, then we are making a mistake, because learners will end up losing incredible skills that they should develop through teaching and learning. So what it means, though, is that some of the tasks can be made a little bit easier for learners and teachers to improve the quality of learning. For example, teachers may not be able to provide individualized feedback to learners, especially if the class is too big. And that's where AI can come in, where the assessment and the feedback can be supported through the use of AI so that learners get individualized feedback. But we should not replace what the learners are supposed to do, that is to learn, and say now learning should be done by AI. That's not what we should do.
But that's easier said than done, right? Because if AI is available, I had a conversation with the University of Cape Town a few months ago, and they've taken away the need to do an assessment of whether a particular response to an examination was AI generated or not, in a bit to maybe encourage use of AI. So one would find that if a student, a scholar at any level, is ill-prepared for an examination, has not done the right amount of studying, then AI is the next best answer.
So what this actually means, and the example you are giving, what it demonstrates is that maybe we need to rethink what we mean by teaching and learning in the first place, and what we mean by assessment. So for example, if a learner goes to the classroom only to be given information, that information is available in the internet. AI can generate that information, and maybe learning should not be about that. In the same way, if an assessment is about regurgitating information and not any critical engagement with the content, then AI can replace the learner there, and learners may, for lack of a better word, cheat. So what needs to happen is that teachers and academics need to rethink how we assess, what we assess, and at what level we assess. That way, for example, just a simple example, if we bring in more oral examination, where learners don't just write the work in written form and submit what is written, but that they present that in an oral presentation or in a presentation, then that way we'll be able to assess whether they've internalized the content, they've understood it, and are able to share it with their peers.
Now, infrastructure is often cited as the main hurdle. For example, only 20% of rural schools have internet at the last count. How limiting is that problem, and what workarounds might exist? I mean, we continue to talk about the massive disparities between the rich and the poor, those who have opportunity and those that don't in South Africa. Is this not widening that gap, Professor?
Certainly, it will, and it is widening the gap. I mean, if you look at some schools that have no perhaps electricity even, let alone artificial intelligence, it's going to be bit difficult to get to that level. Nevertheless, yes, statistically, if you look at a school holistically and say, to what extent do they have internet, and not internet for the office of the principal, for example, but internet that is used for teaching and learning, then the number is really worrying. However, if we look at how many learners have access to cell phones or devices similar to cell phones that have got access to the internet, and then start thinking about how do we change teaching and learning so that it's not about just using the textbook that you have in the classroom, but maybe allow learners to use the devices that they have or share if necessary, I think we'll make some headway. But this does not mean the government and stakeholders such as the business sector and everybody else should not invest a little bit more in ensuring that the schools have adequate infrastructure, which is actually sad that in 2025 we're still worried about that problem of infrastructure at the basic level, such as internet. And I sure hope that within the next 5 years, more effort is going to be done to ensure that we make some headway in offering these services to schools.
Now, you've done some research and covered countries like Indonesia and Thailand. Now, what sort of practices support or seem to boost AI in those communities?
So the research that we did, we looked at two components. One was done with the colleagues in Indonesia, the other one with colleagues in Thailand. And we were looking at what could be barriers that could prevent the integration of artificial intelligence, comparing South Africa and those two countries. And what we find is that one of the big difference is the attitude. We found that colleagues in Thailand in particular, have quite positive attitudes towards embracing artificial intelligence. But it does not just begin with, an individual's attitude. It begins with the training that they're receiving at university level, as well as the efforts that are being put in place by their governments. Fortunately for them, maybe unfortunately for us, they're quite advanced in ensuring that their schools have the infrastructure that we do not have in South Africa. But I think from the research that we did, there is quite hope. I looked at the data and felt that our students, specifically student teachers, are embracing artificial intelligence, are willing to use it in their schools, but they are worried that maybe the principals, when they get there, might not be as open to these technologies, but otherwise they themselves show some promise and willingness to use these technologies.
So, Professor, are there low-hanging fruit interventions, for example, simple tools or pilots that you would recommend as starting points in under-resourced schools?
So one of the challenges that we have is that some of the tools obviously don't come for free. So in some instances, people have to pay to access some of the really good tools that they can use. However, there is a lot of freely available tools. ChatGPT, which you mentioned earlier, is available for free. So people can actually just download the app and see how best to use it. But also, I know Meta AI is freely available to some extent. Of course, if you want to get the advanced tools, then you have to pay a little bit. But that said, I think a major step, a major project that needs to take place across universities, across schools and districts, is that we need to provide training for teachers. It's not easy to know which tools to use. It's not easy to know how to use those tools. So some training has to take place. And I know some universities have short courses and some have actually integrated AI training into their formal programs. And one would encourage teachers to look out for those and say, how could we access such training so that we can be able to integrate it into our daily teaching and learning?
So I want to touch a little bit on content, right? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about ChatGPT as a platform or DeepSeek, right? It allows an individual to go onto any of these platforms and draw content based on a particular subject matter, right? So let's talk about the input of that content that becomes available. I mean, how much of it is representative to what we want to teach here in South Africa, or the stuff that we would like our learners to actually learn?
So when they develop these tools, let's take ChatGPT, for example, they would train it from a wide variety of data that is available mainly on the internet. So those data sets tend to be global, but also, across different disciplines. So there is a lot of content that's focused on mathematics or biology or economics or whatever subject matter. And then what then happens, and this is where I believe training has to come in, the output you get is as good as the question or the prompt that you ask the tool. So if you ask ChatGPT a lousy question, you are not likely to get a proper output because it's going to respond to what you are asking it. And therefore, there is a need, as I indicated, for training to teachers that if you want to prompt around CAPS curriculum, for example, how should you do that? In some instances, some of these tools do allow you to upload the material, such as your CAPS document or even a textbook, if it's possible. You can upload it onto the back end so that when you ask or when your learners are using it, it responds specifically to that particular context that you are dealing with. So there is quite a lot of flexibility, but the tools themselves are really good. They're good enough. The question is, are we ready and do we have the skills to use them effectively?
Professor Mnguni, as we wrap, if you had the ear of the Minister of Basic Education today, what 3 strategic interventions would you urge to accelerate AI readiness?
The first thing that I would ask the minister to do is let's resource our schools. It's really important. It's not okay, in my view, that learners from one school get the best education, best facility, best resources, and perhaps even best artificial intelligence when learners from another school struggle even to have a window in the school. So I would say maybe step number 1, let's get the infrastructure right. Let's ensure teachers are properly trained, and then let's use the technologies to help these learners succeed.
Professor Lindelani Mnguni, Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Pretoria.